Moycullen, 13 points. Tourlestrane, 6 points. The Galway Champions cruise to their first ever Connacht title. This is in Gaelic football now. A great week for Moycullen. Obviously, they're Galway minor champions, and now they've their first ever Connacht senior title. Another interesting storyline going into this game was managers Fergal O'Donnell of Tourlestrane and Don Kennellan of Moycullen were former teammates for Roscommon, but they're on opposite sides this day. Moycullen running out 13 points to 6 winners, their first ever Connacht senior title, Luke.
Yeah, look, and I suppose a little bit trickier, I suppose, for them this time as well. And that, look, I suppose the last few games we watched from them when they steamrolled past Westport and stuff, and they absolutely cruising through parts of Galway Championship as well. That, look, they finally kind of, I suppose, they've got a stern enough test from Tourlestrane as well, who look as the 7-time winners of Sligo as well. They've been around the block a few times now. They know what they're doing. They're a good wily old side as well. And in the first half, they really frustrated Moycullen, I thought. And look, Moycullen really struggled to get up and running, I think, in the first half. That, look, they weren't really scoring from play at all in the first half. I don't think they did score at all.
They didn't score a point from play. That's what I'm saying. Like, because you're saying here, you're very correct there, saying that, look, they blew away Westport. And that was one of the games where you're looking at thinking they stuck 3-18 on Westport. And it was like, whoa, like that is a real statement to the rest of the country. Like that is a real, we're coming for that All-Ireland. And now Strokestown held them for long periods of that game. And they looked quite shaky against Strokestown. Now they don't hit a point from play in the first half against Tourlestrane. Like, albeit, yes, you know, absolute dynasty there in Sligo, but their first provincial final in 41 years, like, it's one of those things where you're looking at it saying, like, Moycullen looked perfect against Westport, but is there maybe a little bit of a kind of weakness there being shown? That if you can just hold them, like the Desi Keneally's freeze, like without them in the first half, they would have been in dire straits at halftime.
Yeah, look, I suppose, look, the thing is they did work it out in the second half, and that, look, they're a huge side, like that. They're very, very well conditioned, and that the fact that they have the three Kellys in around midfield, Peter Cook now is back in after the last day as well. That I think there was a bit of concern with the Strokestown game wasn't around and stuff as well. What his availability was going to be like, and look, the fact that he was back as well, and he kicked big scores in the second half, and is a huge addition in there as well. That I do think that they could be a side that, because of their physical kind of prowess, I suppose, and just their kind of their stamina, everything like that as well, their power as well, that when they get up to the big pitches as well in Croke Park, this is the same thing with kind of Curve in sometimes as well, was that sometimes in Connacht they wouldn't deliver the like perfect performances really, and that they could get bogged down sometimes as well. But then as soon as they came up to Croke Park, they'd be back there, and those kind of forwards, like I suppose the Desi Keneally's for them as well, and you've Gallagher in there as well. Kelly's are coming from deep and everything as well. That once they get up into one of those pitches, I wouldn't be surprised if it did just click for them all of a sudden, and that everything kind of, all those concerns kind of go away. But at the same time, yeah, they did struggle, I think, in the first half. Look, they went in 4-3 up at halftime. Not a classic really at all in the first half, but look, they worked out in the second half, and they finished very, very strongly anyway as well. And look, it's job done. And for a team, I suppose, that have been with kind of Curve in for ages in Galway, that Curve inside that was dominated for so long, and then the 1 year that they did win Galway, they didn't get a crack at Connacht as well. For them, I think they'll just be absolutely delighted that they've got over the line in Connacht, and like whatever manner they do it in, they'll be absolutely thrilled with that. And look, I suppose the fact they must have been weighing pretty heavily on their mind, I'd imagine, that the year that they did win Galway, that they couldn't have a go at Connacht and they couldn't test themselves against the rest of the province. So the fact they have now and got over the line, look, they must be absolutely thrilled with that.
Yeah, no doubt, because to tag on to that point, I would have backed them to win the province that year in 2020 as well. I would have seriously struggled to find anybody that I would have backed to beat them that year. There was a 2-minute spell where Moycullen absolutely put the game to bed, in my opinion. That was their burst of 3 points. Peter Cook, Micheál O'Reilly and Paul Kelly all pointed in just over 2 minutes. And then on top of that, Peter Cook hit a boomer not long after to make it 10 points to 5. I think those two incidents, that 2-minute spell and Peter Cook's belter of a point, I think that was, if you're looking at key moments where Moycullen just separated themselves from Tourlestrane, those two stick out to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, and Tourlestrane some good moments too as well. I think, look, Liam Gowan, the corner forward there from playing for Sligo as well, had a really good game as well. He's a really great threat in there too. But look, I suppose that Moycullen, like that, they just seem to have some really, really good pieces, I suppose, as well. Look, I'm a big fan of Mulcahy, the fullback as well. David Wynn and cornerback as well is a really nice player too. That they just seem to have, they just have really quality players as well. And that, look, I think as well, after watching the Kellys during the year as well for Galway, when them getting to an All-Ireland final as well, they just seem to have that bit of a bounce about them as well. And look, with Peter Cook back in there too, like I'm really excited to see how they go on as well, because look, the next time we've talked on the pod here a lot about how strong Ulster is, and look, that's the way it's going now, is that it's going to be Connacht versus Ulster. And look, we were talking about this just there in the hurling, that you can nearly argue that I'd think that the Connacht and Ulster teams kind of well, look, I suppose they're going to be two very interesting games, I suppose, in there as well. That, like, it's very, very difficult to call, I suppose. It's very hard to judge and to gauge, I suppose, where Moycullen are in comparison to a Kilcoo or a Glen as well. And look, those questions that we raised here about if a Tourlestrane side can frustrate, I suppose, Moycullen as much as they did in the first half, like what would a Glen or Kilcoo, whose defensive system is off the charts good, what would they do to Moycullen? Yeah. And that's the big kind of question I think I have about them going forward.
Yeah, or even Kilmacud Crokes. We're going to talk about them later. Like Kilmacud Crokes in their game, they held for a second consecutive game. They held their opponents scoreless from play in the first half, Port Arlington, and then they did it to the Downs. So going forward, like Moycullen need to get their attacking back on that level of that Westport game. We know they have it in them, and they could well do that to Kilcoo or Waddy Graham's Glen, depending on who they come up against. And by God, that is going to be one hell of a semi-final. I mean, I can't wait to see who's going to come out of that game anyway.